How do I grow in life financially? Do I need to earn more money, save more, invest more, read more books? I know that I'm doing most of this already, but I still feel like I'm falling behind. If this is you, let's talk about what most of social media won't tell you about growing financially.
So there's this Buddhist guy, right? And mountain man, way up high, going down this long, windy road. And out of nowhere, this other guy riding a horse right toward him. He's Buddhist too, I think. Actually, I'm not sure.
Just let them both be Buddhist.
Okay, fine. So the guy on the horse is riding toward our guy so fast that our guy's got to get out of the way so as not to be trampled by the horse. And the guy gets up all dusty and he goes, "Hey, where the fuck are you going?" And our guy on the horse, he says, "I don't know. Ask the horse."
Ask the horse.
Exactly. See that's it. That was my face. The horse represents all of our fears and traumas, and it's got us running around 100 miles an hour to the point where we can't even answer a simple question. Where are you going? Where are you going, Mike?
So, where are you going? See, I believe many of us, and this is particularly true in the social media age, feel as though we're moving forward, we're making progress, but we don't really know where we're going and what we're making progress towards. And that can lead to confusion, it can lead to internal conflict around what we want and why we want it. And if you feel like that, that's completely fine. But if you really want to grow financially in life, this is the first thing you must do. The idea of intrinsic and extrinsic motivations is something that is deeply rooted in science. But how do you distinguish between the two? Well, extrinsic motivation is when you do something or you engage in an activity because the reward that you're seeking is of the external nature. And that could be as simple as anything from financial incentives to praise from your family, friends, or peer groups. Or it could be something as simple as social approval, social validation. What the science tells us, though, is that when you engage in activities with such motivation, it is very, very hard for you to gain self satisfaction from engaging in that activity. Intrinsic motivations, however, is the complete opposite. With an intrinsic motivation, you engage in this activity, you do this thing because the reward means something to you personally. And the science tells us that people who engage in these activities or these tasks with an intrinsic motivation, number one, enjoy it more and have a greater sense of self fulfillment by engaging in those activities. Now, the science behind why intrinsic motivation is more effective than extrinsic motivation is quite fascinating. There was a paper published back in 2008 by Canada Psychology. It was a look into the self determination theory, and more specifically, the macro theory behind human motivation, development, and health. And in it, it found that intrinsic motivation is linked to long term behavioral change and maintenance. So, in other words, if one of the things that you discover being key to you being able to grow financially is the fact that you need to perhaps save more money. Having intrinsic motivation will allow you to not only just break some old habits if they need to be broken, but form new habits sustainably in the long term. And this is really, really important. But this is the synopsis of that study. They said that when individuals are intrinsically motivated to adopt healthy habits or pursue personal goals, they are more likely to sustain their efforts over time, leading to long lasting positive outcomes. Now, that sounds all very well and good, but there is a challenge, and there's one specific challenge that we have in 2024, and certainly in the social media age, and it's this. Social media is extremely good, very, very efficient at drawing out our external motivations, i.e., getting us to think, engineering us to think that certain things are the societal norm or the new societal standard when in fact they're not. And it's bizarre because a lot of the content that does this, and there's lots of it out there, It's packaged up to be inspirational or aspirational, something that you should be aiming towards, a journey that you absolutely need to go on. And because there's so much out there, sometimes you may not necessarily catch yourself falling into this kind of content. I'll give you a prime example of one that I spotted a couple of weeks ago. Here it is. Let me know in the comments what you think. Now, think what you want of that example, but the point that I'm trying to make here is that unless you are consuming content online with a good amount of discernment and a really clear understanding of who you are, what's important to you, where you're going, it is very, very easy to start to question your reality, start to question why you're not as wealthy as some of these influencers are purporting to be, why you are not traveling the world or going on holidays, traveling first class or business class. So much so that this is the topic of research right now. And there was a research done in 2020. It's called To Be or Not to Be. That is the question. Financial deliberative thinkers resist exposure to luxury consumption on social media. It was published in the Journal of Consumer Affairs. And it delved into how social media influences the financial habits and the behaviors among adults, not kids, adults. And it explored the relationship between being exposed to luxury consumption on social media and the financial decisions that ensued. And these are the findings. It found that individuals exposed to such content were more likely to engage in impulsive spending and experience financial strain. Now, many people will say, well, look, social media is all a bit of fun. It's never supposed to be anything that you should live your life by. But I think that isn't necessarily true in 2024. I think people live their lives on social media, are heavily influenced by what they see on social media. They aspire to what they see on social media. So if we take the fact that social media is not real and we all live in the real world right now, how do you free yourselves from this imaginary existence, this imaginary picture of what perfect is, and how do you dial into your own sense of perfect, your own sense of utopia, the perfect place that you want to be 1 year, 2 year, 3 years from now? That's what I want to walk you through with 3 very, very clear exercises, and I'm going to drop in a bonus at the end. So the first exercise that you can do to help you gain perspective of what's really important to you, where you want to go, is the Wheel of Life. Now, if you've picked up my book, this is the very first exercise I ask people to complete. And the whole idea of the Wheel of Life is that it looks at life, generally speaking, from 8 sectors. And in each of these sectors, the idea is that you score yourself 1 out of 10 based on how you feel about each of those areas in the present moment right now. Now, once you've scored yourself, the idea is, and this is what I get people to do in the corporate setting and on individual basis when I do coaching, is think about the 3 areas that are most important to you. Look at your score. Are you happy with that score? And if you're not, I then ask people to document those 3 areas specifically, and you could pick more if you wanted to, you could pick less, you could pick 1, if 1 is important to you, you could pick 4, and prioritize those for improvement. But the crucial thing is to understand why you are picking whatever sector that you pick for improvement. So what's the real reason why? Get really granular, really specific with your reason why. And what it does here is it starts to open up the important areas of life that you may have just forgotten about because you've been busy, that you may have let go because family and business have got in the way. It's a great way to provide further focal point. This is an overarching exercise for life generally. And what I typically do in coaching and corporate sessions is I get people to now go 1 step further and have a look at something called the finance wheel. Now, the finance wheel is very similar to the wheel of life. But in the finance wheel, we have 6 areas specifically. Now, much like the wheel of life, you score yourself 1 out of 10 in each of the 6 sectors. and you highlight 2, maybe 3, to identify which areas are important for you to improve right now. And this is where it actually gets really, really interesting. I've had a number of instances where in the finance world, for example, someone says that one of the key areas that I want to be able to improve is something like, fun and recreation. And when you get into the specifics of what that essentially means, it could mean being able to take more time off, to go on 2 holidays a year, or to go on more regular city breaks over the weekends. And the interesting thing is that when you start to dig down into it and ask those questions, okay, so where do you want to go on a city break? There is always a financial element to it. And so in the finance world, it may be a case that saving is something that you want to improve. Well, if you want to go on more holidays, city breaks, for example, on the weekends, you probably need to save a little bit of money towards that. And you'll start to find that there is synergy between the things that you probably have in your life will and the things that you need to improve in your finance will. Now, the key thing here is to remember that the wheel of life is designed to tease out the intrinsic motivations. If it is truly your desire to increase fun and recreation, that's a you goal. That's not something that has been introduced or maybe influenced by external factors. So the idea is by having your wheel of life and your finance wheel working in tandem, not only are you pulling out your intrinsic motivations, but you're also drilling down on the key things that are important to you and the things that you need to improve as part of that. The third exercise is a timeline exercise, and I do this in coaching one-on-one with people to simply try and pull out what are the medium to long-term goals that people hold. It's okay to say that you want to go on holiday 2-3 times a year, or you want to do more city breaks. But if, for example, on your timeline you have a house purchase on the very near horizon, maybe 2 to 3 years, it may be a case that unless you're earning more money, that you're not able to take the 2 to 3 city breaks that you wanted. Maybe you can only take 1, and the money that you would have allocated to the second or the third city break will go towards a house deposit. Now, this is how the timeline works. In the timeline, you will basically pick 4 areas of your life, or it could be 4 specific goals. For example, in your wheel of life, if you wanted to improve fun and recreation, that might be a goal for you. But the idea is you have up to 4 areas. You can have less if you wish. But against that axis, you then plot against the time. So what are the goals and when do you want to achieve them in the future? And it's really, really important to be specific. Do you want to achieve a particular goal 10 years from now, 15 years from now? Are there more near-sighted goals in the near term, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years from now? And it's a combination of all of these 3 that will help you break the cycle of being subject or influenced by extrinsic motivations. It's very, very worthwhile doing. I will make all of those exercises available to you. I'll post a link where you can take it for free, courtesy of myself, that will help you kind of document where you are. But as we are talking about growing in life financially, there is an additional tip that I want to leave you with, and it's this. In order to know what to do, you oftentimes have to acquire the knowledge of what to do. And there is an old adage which through my career has been so true for me, and it is the fact that you don't know what you don't know till you know you don't know it. There is a wealth of information, there is a wealth of knowledge out there, and so you have to be hungry. You have to be willing to go out there and seek the knowledge so that you can identify what it is that you need to improve, and more importantly, how to improve it. So books are really, really important. This is my book right here. It's called The Money Basics, How to Become Your Own Financial Hero. It is a physical book, but it's also an audio book as well. And I know that there are services that will allow you to gain the short form of a book, but oftentimes there are nuances within the book which are just so important. You know, certain stories, anecdotes might hit you differently when you read it or listen to it in an audiobook that you won't necessarily get within short form. So take the time, go and read some finance books. Again, this is my one, but another one that I really, really love is The Psychology of Money. I've got that right here in the office right now. I've read it a number of times, but this book right here is an amazing book. There is a whole host of them. Be hungry. Go and seek information. And more importantly, once you have got that information, if you feel stuck or you need assistance, by all means, seek help. People like myself, I do corporate setting coaching, groups coaching, and I also do one-on-one coaching as well. I recently actually just launched a book club, which is 6 weeks, taking people through all of the practical elements of this book and all of the principles in this. And because science is something that I'm very, very fascinated in the 6-week book club, there are also behavioral assessments that we go through as well to help people understand how they think of money, what their money scripts are, how to actually think about changing those things subtly over time, embedding new habits. Help is out there. Just don't be afraid to go and seek it. But look, it's important that you grow financially through your life. I haven't talked about investing here specifically because one thing I have found in my career is that when we talk about money and improving with money, a lot of it, 20% of it, really is the practical things that you do. 80% of it is up here, your intrinsic and your extrinsic motivations.